Okay guys, so today I want to go over the newly announced Tenyi support. These cards are actually very good. And I love Swordsoul. It's one of my favorite decks of all time. I properly learned and became better at Yu-Gi-Oh! During Swordsoul format. I was playing Bird Up, and then I started playing Swordsoul. So I want to go over these cards, and I want to give you an idea on the mechanics or theory of the Swordsoul cards and why these are good, but also some of the mechanical limitations of the Swordsoul cards. Now, hopefully, maybe we'll get Swordsoul support announced in this set. This is coming out in OCG later this month, and for us in the TCG in January, I believe. So it's not that far away, but it is a very different format away. Okay, so first of all, we have the level 4. So this is called Surya, Tenyi Spirit Surya. This is a light level 4 tuner. It's a worm monster, of course. If you control a worm monster or a face-up non-effect monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. So right off the bat, this is a solid extender. If this card is sent to the graveyard as synchro material for a worm monster, you can special summon one Tenyi link monster from your extra deck, but it can't be used as link material, and then you lose life points equal to its link rating, times 1,000, and it's once per turn. So this makes playing through things a lot easier. It makes Extension a lot more reliable. It makes Nibiru less of a game over, or it's less likely to be a game over card against this deck. And it gives you a lot more flexibility in combination with some of the other cards. Two quick nitpicks here, though. Why can't we treat this as a non-tuner if we want? Because this is kind of like a normal thing now when you get support. Like Centurion Atri is a tuner, but you can treat it as a non-tuner. And that actually would matter quite a lot. For example, super typical scenario, you normal summon Moyi, effect, reveal a card in your hand to be able to special a token. They go Chain Link to Imperm, okay? Now, a lot of people will play Circle. Even though this card is garbage for card economy, it's often just necessary to be able to play and not have to pass turn to a single Imperm or Veiler. So this tributes a worm monster as cost, so it's really good for dodging, and then you can add a worm from your deck to your hand. So in this very, very common scenario where you go normal summon Moyi, they chain Imperm or Veiler, and then you Dragon Circle, what would happen is you would tribute the Moyi, so the Imperm or the Veiler fizzles, the token comes out, and then you could just add the Surya to hand. You could special summon the Surya. You've already used your normal summon. You could special this because you control a worm or a face-up non-effect, and then you could treat it as a non-tuner, and you could just continue about your play. But now you can't do that. So I'm like, these cards aren't broke. Like Swordsoul is not broken. Tenyi cards are not broken. Why put this limitation here? Then the other nitpick is this only gets to cheat out if it's sent as synchro material. But Tenyi has a bunch of link monsters. Why couldn't we cheat it out if it was used as any material for a worm monster? Anyhow, this card is still good. Okay, next one is the synchro. So this card is a level 8 generic. So 3,000 attack, 0 defense, same as Draco Berserker. One tuner, 1+ non-tuner monsters. If this card is synchro summoned and you have 2 or more worm monsters in your graveyard and or banishment, this is good because you don't always have them all engraved. Sometimes you have like a banished, a Shuna, and then like a Vishuddha engraved. You can add a field spell from your deck to your hand. Any field spell in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! You can only use this once per turn. And then the last part I feel like is kind of trash. This card gains these effects while a face-up non-effect monster is on the field. Can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effects, can't be targeted by opponent's card effects, and it can make a second attack during each battle phase. I feel like this the nitpick here is, okay, searching any field spell is obviously insane, but we don't have a Swordsoul Synchro 12. So it's not like we can just put a token on field and then turn this into something. Maybe they're thinking that the play with this is that this is just like one of the materials for making a shaman, and then the shaman brings back something else and you like climb a different way. But this feels kind of like there's a really strong going first effect, and then there's this kind of going second effect that this card has to stay on the field through your opponent's turn and then still be available in your battle phase to be relevant for. Anyhow, I'm not going to linger too long. The last is the field spell. So this card says, when this card is activated, you can add a Vessel for the Dragon Cycle or Heavenly Dragon Circle from your deck to your hand. That is very good. You contribute one worm monster, then target one monster on the field, destroy it. I think this is not broken, but it's good. You can only use this effect once per turn. Then once per turn during your end phase, you can send this card to the graveyard, and if you do, place a Flawless Perfection of the Tenyi from your deck or graveyard face up in your field zone. And you can only activate one Eternal Perfection once per turn. So, first of all, this adds Vessel or Heavenly Dragon Circle. So Heavenly Dragon Circle is the crazy one because it's better for card economy, because you can send a war monster from your deck to the grave, like a Shuna or whatever. And then if you control a face-up non-effect monster, you get to add a Tenyi, and usually you will have that. And so you could be adding the Surya, for example, as a good extender, or whatever else that you're missing. So this card is really, really good. Maybe you would play one of these because it's searchable. But I think that Vessel is a lot better, and it makes it more reliable to break boards with Engine, because you have like Vishuddha and Ashuna access much more reliable, whether it's in the graveyard or in your hand. So I think that this card is really good, and because it's now searchable, that's really good. So the last part, where you can place a Flawless Perfection face up in your field zone, so you basically get to replace it with this. This card says, all non-effect monsters on the field are unaffected by monster effects. Once per turn, if your opponent special summons and effect monsters while you control a face-down monster or non-effect monster, you can draw 2 cards. So obviously you could make it to where you have a non-effect monster, and then your opponent like can only play around this so much. If they use like some spot removal, like a Cosmic, to remove this, that means they're probably not removing the blackout. So it's like, okay. Now, drawing 2 cards on your opponent's turn is obviously really good if you're on a hand trap build. If you're on a power spell build, and you're confident that you can survive till the next turn, this is also good because you'd be drawing into Engine that helps break boards, or your actual breakers like Raigeki, Darkhold, Thrust, Talents, whatever. So this card is not good, but the fact that it's searchable off of this card is good. This card you could argue is a 3 of, because you could just draw it and it's good, like it's a plus. But it's searchable, so I don't know if it will, ultimately be 1, 2, or 3 or whatever. Okay, I want to show you some gimmicky combos real quick, and then I'll go over some, like, all the field spells that I've looked at that maybe have some applicability here. So when our replays, I'm just going to let my opponent put 2 monsters on field real quick. I don't think you have much control over your opponent's hand or whatever in Omega, so... Okay, so my opponent places 2 cards onto the field. I actually didn't have to wait this long to show this, but anyhow. So we normal summon a Moyi. Maybe it gets Imperm, Veiler, negated, whatever. We have the Surya in our hand, or we have Surya access, and this is an extender, so we special summon it because we control a Worm or a face-up non-effect monster. And now we go into the Synchro 8. So this one can search any field spell, and the Surya can cheat out a Link monster. So... Shaman, I think, is the best Link monster, and you will use this mostly to play around things like Nibiru, and you really have to be efficient with this card to be good at Swordsoul. You don't have to make this here. It actually may be better to, depending on your hand, to make Monk if you were going to go for Draco Masters. That is the Link monster that gives you a pop if you have non-effect monsters on your field or on the grave. But yeah, and then we're going to search Despia, Theater of the Branded. So now we can activate Despia, Theater of the Branded, and we can summon Guardian Chimera. And this will actually resolve because it was summoned by a spell effect. It only gets the draw pop if it was summoned by a spell effect. Now, we're obviously not going to be searching Poly or anything crazy, but if you're siding, going second, no one's going to expect that you're going to do this, and they're probably going to panic too when you search this card. So you could either draw 2, pop 1, which is, good for decks that break boards with Engine and also play breakers. Or you can pop 2, draw 1, which is, whatever. Whether you make the Shaman or not, or whether you make the Shaman and keep it versus send it to the grave or whatever, is probably going to be based on whether you can get something back from the grave. Like, for example, if you made the Shaman and you just did a pop 1, draw 2, and then you Shaman to bring back the Mula Adara, this card would be able to attack twice during the battle phase. You just would have to make sure you have a non-effect monster on the field. So, there would be like options for things to do here. Anyhow, the last replay that I wanted to show is on Edo Pro, because I don't think that you can control your opponent's hand on Omega. So let's say that you're starting your play, you Moyi, you summon the token, you Grandmaster, and you search for the Long Yuan. And this is when you're starting to sweat because you're wondering about Nibiru. You dump the Ashuna, and you definitely do not use it because that's not playing around Nib. You want to keep as many of your resources in rotation as possible. So now that you have put the Ashuna in the grave, you bring out the Mpura. Now, quick comment on these Tenyi cards right here, because some people might be like, why are you playing this card? A lot of people will only play the good Tenyis, so Ashuna and Vishuddha, and then some number of Adara. Now also the Surya, because this card is also one of the good Tenyis. Or some people will play Shithana because of the level 4s for helping you use the level 4 tuner token to go into a level 8. This has the least bad effect. The problem with this is that Baxia is a core part of breaking boards, and this shuffles cards up to the number of different original attributes of the worm monsters used to synchro summon it. So if you use a token, which is going to be a water token, and the Shithana, which is also going to be a water monster. Also, this was not even the deck profile I was trying to get into. You'll only be able to spin one. But if you instead use like Mapura or the Nahata, then it's not water, and so you can spin two. You may be wondering, well, if you're going to be playing the Surya anyhow, why wouldn't you just bring out the Surya off of the Ashuna, and then your water token and the Surya, which is a light, could make the Baxia. But the problem is the token is a tuner, and this is a tuner that can't be treated as a non-tuner, so that doesn't work. So in this case, we bring out the Mapura, which is a level 4 non-water, and then we special the Surya that we either drew or we search for. And so here we get to resolve both again. So we can cheat out, for example, a Shaman of the Tenyi, and then we get to search for any field spell. Now, I'm just showing you the Eternal Perfection right now because that's the support card, but you can search whatever. The reason for cheating out the Shaman here is that often you have to hard make the Shaman, which can be harder. Here I'm going to use the vessel that I searched off of Eternal Perfection to get back my Ashuna in rotation, and then I'm going to discard the Ashuna, so keeping as many unknown cards in my hand unknown, putting this back in rotation for next turn because it's a resource in the grave, and the Shaman brings us back our Sinister Sovereign. So that's just an example of how this card makes it a lot easier to extend through things. And then the only problem at this point is what do these cards do during your opponent's turn? So yeah, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I will do a proper deck profile later, but I just wanted to show you some of the cards or things that you could do. Okay, I'll quickly go over the other field spells that I came across. I looked up every field spell in Yu-Gi-Oh! So this one I think is probably not worth playing, but it's interesting because it deals with worms. So all worms gain 300 attack and defense. Once per turn you can banish 3 worms from your graveyard, then target a card on the field, destroy it. So this could be helpful for breaking boards, but you would only play it going second because it's a brick going first, and I think it's probably not strong enough to play, but I'm just showing it here. Kyoto Waterfront, so each time a card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can place a counter on it, and when you have 3 or more counters, you can add a kaiju. So you could debate that if you're playing cards like Raigeki Dark Hole, that you would very easily be able to put the counters on this, but I think it's also probably too gimmicky. The next one is Ryuge, so this is what used to be called Apodrocosis. Now, this card is not a starter. You have to have the Pendulum card or the Quick Play for it to be a starter, and you can't actually resolve the broken effect of this card where you special 3 level 10s unless all of them are Ryuge monsters. And I don't think it's worth playing all the bricks for that, but if you did want to play this, there are some useful targets. So when this card is activated, you can take 3 monsters from your deck, Dinosaur, Sea Serpent, and Worm. You add one to your hand, you banish the other, and you send the last to the graveyard. And then you're locked into special summoning Dragon, Dinosaur, Sea Serpent, or Worms. So the lock doesn't really hurt Swordsoul that much. And there are good cards, so you can search any worm. So obviously you can add any worm to your hand that you want. And if you wanted to search a dinosaur instead, you could add a kaiju, or you could add Pankratops, which would obviously be good going second. The problem is there aren't really good sea serpent monsters to play. One of the least bad ones, which is also only useful going second, this basically special summons if your opponent controls a monster and you don't, and then it becomes level 4. So you can use it for synchroing into the generic stuff like the Draco Berserker or whatever. But again, this is just adding bricks into your deck. So I feel if you play a Ryuge version of Swordsoul, this probably becomes better, but I don't think it's worth the bricks. Closed Forest, this is actually good. So this says field spell cards cannot be activated, but also field spell cards cannot be activated during the turn this card was destroyed. So let's say you're playing against Runic, and you have this card on field, and he's like, oh, no problem, I've drawn Tip or Destruction, and he like destructions the closed forest and destroys it, and then he tries to activate Fountain, and you're like, hey, actually, you can't activate them the turn this card was destroyed. So this is also a lingering effect. Now, right now, this might not be the craziest card, but I mean, Yubel does have a broken field spell. If you watched Team Sam's profile recently, they play set rotation and terraforming. So, you know, you could argue for playing this even this format. This card is very, very good. It probably could be better in another format, but I think it is worth citing maybe one of right now. Another weird one I found is Fire Prison. So this says, if any link monsters are on the field, neither player can link summon a link monster with a lower link rating than the highest link rating on the field. And then it also says monsters cannot attack except link monsters. So this is why this card is probably not worth playing, but this is a floodgate for link decks or decks that have to make a link to play, because remember, this one cheats out whatever Tenyi link you want all the way up to link 4. I mean, this card is not very good. This one is debatably playable. This one is excellent. So, you know, you could play it, but you have to find a way to get rid of it because of the next effect. Also might be just worth showing that this card, so when you can search field spells, this card becomes better. This card is not good, okay, but this card does become better. So it can't be normal summoner set, and it has to be special summoned by a worm monster's effect. If a monster is banished by card effect, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from the graveyard or from your hand. And if this card is special summoned, so it triggers itself, you can target a card in the field zone and a monster your opponent controls or in their graveyard, banish them. This is a level 8. This is awkward. Again, like, I don't know why there's no Synchro 12 Swordsoul monster. This might make more sense, but that's a brick. This card says each time a monster is normal summoned, target that monster, banish it. This is a broken effect, but it's not useful in this format. Like, unless you're going to a locals where there are a bunch of people playing Flu, even though they get effects from being banished, like, they can't just... I don't know how they're supposed to play when every single time they normal summon the monster is banished, because this is not once per turn. Even though they come back during the next standby phase of that player. Like, they're going to be dead before then anyhow. So this card is broken, but it's probably not the format for it. Now this one is probably one of the more interesting ones, the Generator Boss Stage. Now, just to be clear, this is only good going first, which means that you probably will be siding this, and your siding patterns will be very easy if you're on Power Spell, because you'll just take out some of the less flexible power spells, and you'll put this in the target. So, once per turn, if a card is added from the main deck to your opponent's hand, except during the damage step, this also includes the draw phase, by the way, you can special summon one generator monster from your deck in defense position. If you special summon a generator monsters during your opponent's turn, so this triggers itself, you can special summon as many generator tokens, which are level 4s, as possible in attack position, but destroy them during the end phase, even if this leaves the field. And that is also very relevant. So probably the worst of all the things that you could use is this one, Frody. So this one tributes any number of generator monsters, so including itself, but also the tokens that you generated. And then you can destroy that many monsters on the field, but your opponent also gets to draw. So I feel like if your opponent didn't get to draw, this would probably be crazy. But because they draw, this is probably the worst one. The best one is this one, but this one is a brick. And the problem is that this one only specials from deck. It doesn't also special from hand. But this one is clearly the best. So this says, if your opponent adds a cards from the deck to their hand, except during the draw phase, quick effect, you can make your opponent send a monster from their hand or field to the graveyard, their choice. Now this is like really just like a bonus. The actual good effect is when a card or effect is activated, quick effect, you contribute 2 generator and or spellcaster monsters, negate the activation, and if you destroy that card, and it's once per turn. So it's very unlikely that you're going to be in a situation where you haven't summoned enough tokens to where you can use any of these generator monster effects. And if your field was so flooded that you only had space to summon 1 token, you'd still be able to use this effect. It's just that you would have to also tribute itself because you have to tribute 2. Because this is also 3,000, it means if this card stays on the field, it will be easier to OTK because it has 3,000. But these effects are realistically only going to be used in your opponent's turn because that's when you're going to get the tokens from your field spell. Okay, so another one is Utgarda. So this one says you contribute 2 generator monsters, Target a card on the field, banish it. Now this is the worst in terms of card economy, but it's a banish, so you could consider it. This one is, in terms of like the rest of your deck, the least bad one because it's a worm, which means that you could search it, although you don't want to do that. You want to special it from your deck with a field spell, but you can reveal it because it's a worm, and the rest you can't reveal or use for anything if you've drawn them. So you can only control one of all of them. When your opponent would special summon a monster's quick effect, you contribute one generator monster or one worm monster. Now this is, I don't know why this one only has to tribute one, but it means that you don't actually need the tokens, and also because your deck is worms, you're going to have worms to tribute. Negate the summon, and if you do, destroy that monsters, and you can only use it once per turn. Now this has the lowest attack, so it's not as useful for the OTK on the crackback. It does have decent defense, so it probably would survive. I think that you either have to play this one or this one. If you're going first and you really wanted to go hardcore into the generator stuff, maybe you could argue for playing multiple targets or something, but I'm not sure about that. I think it's probably not worth it. I think you probably just accept that one is going to be a brick, in which case this is the least bad brick, and you play that. Then there's Necro Valley, you know what that does, and Zombie World, you know what that does. Those are just floodgates. So anyhow, that's my basic idea for some of these cards in Swordsoul and some of the potential. I'm definitely going to try to test this out and come up with a proper build with siding patterns and side deck and everything. So if you want that, well, actually, if you don't want it, I'm doing it anyhow. But if you do want it, then, you know, you can look forward to that. Thanks for watching.